guys, this is Min from Card and Victory Dancewear, and then with another episode of Good Ballet Juju, like a little fun, feel-good podcast I started, which I hope will make you guys smile. And I'm here today with somebody who I think has definitely made you guys smile all across the internet, and that is the lovely Shelby Williams, otherwise known as Biscuit Ballerina. So hi Shelby, it's so nice to finally connect with you after like years, I think, of like being on each other's radar.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you guys how are you doing? Right now I think these are kind of strange times, and I think it's important to talk about it a little. So like, how are you doing, and how's the situation been in Belgium with like in general and with your company situation?
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, luckily I had a lot of things I have to take care of around my apartment. There was like renovation things that weren't finished before we went into this sort of like quarantine lockdown. And so I was like, okay, I can't sit here with this halfway done kitchen. That's what I was working on. And it's been kind of a blessing that it's giving me things not dance related to work on. So it's kept me busy, and it also I think has probably helped deter some anxiety that maybe a lot of dancers are feeling of how do I stay in shape, and everything becomes so focused on the body and maintaining technique and all these other things that I just really have been keeping myself busy watching like hours of YouTube channels, videos a day on like how do you tile a backsplash, and like it's totally not dance related. So it's definitely been very helpful. The situation we have in Belgium right now is I think our last day of working was around the 13, 14, 15 of March, sometime around then.
So it's been about a month.
Yeah,
long,
2 months.
April, May, 2 months. My goodness.
Yeah, it goes by so quickly. So we stopped working then. They canceled the rest of the season. A few weeks later, they announced also that, or just actually recently, they announced that they canceled our normal season for the fall also, just because there is a risk of it continuing on in large groups not being able to gather. And they decided to kind of reshape how we do our fall season. And it's going to be a bunch of micro projects. So it's going to be things that will conform more to social distancing standards, and probably safer option in case there is a second wave, that it's not so much of a loss for the theater to have to cancel really large productions. So
would it be like so it won't be like full length productions, is that right?
No. So it would be things that would be done with smaller amounts of dancers or singers or orchestra people. So they're trying to do more collaborations between the different departments in the theater, which I think is very nice, that we don't really get to spend enough time getting to know the musicians or getting to know the singers, and they're artists too, and they have kind of same passion we do. But usually, like the orchestra members are like down in the pit, and the most you see them is like if you dance close to the edge of the stage and you're like, oh, look at them, and then you dance back, and I think they have the same feeling. And so it's nice that now that we've kind of started to get to know some of the musicians, they're saying the same thing, like, oh yeah, from time to time I see like an arm like wave over the edge of the stage and I'm there like so
but do you know that like I always find that in performances the orchestra gets the loudest applause at the end because they only get one applause, and so the audience just like goes for them like, oh yeah, the people in the pit down below. It's so sad when you say it that way.
But sometimes I think like that's how applause should be. Like sometimes I think it's too long, and I would rather just be like one really concentrated, really strong applause than sometimes it just goes on like everyone has their applause. Of course when there's like someone does a super amazing lead role in the dramatic piece, like they want their moment and they should have their moment to applaud. But sometimes there's ballets where I'm like, we could just do like a really, like chop chop, quick bow, be done with this.
Yeah, I know, especially, I have friends who I've talked to who are in the corps, and sometimes they're like, I'm very tired after the end of the show, and we have to do 6 curtain calls, and it's like, I don't want to do 6 curtain calls, I know you're not clapping for me.
There have definitely been like shows previously in my career where it felt like we were doing more curtain calls than what was necessary. And same thing, I was like in the corps and we're in like a huge group bowing there, and I'm definitely like the curtain is closed, and not just me, it'll be like me and other colleagues, and then our stage manager will start being like, we're gonna go again, and I've definitely been like posing there and been like, no. Like, no, we don't need to. And then the curtain goes. Yeah, curtain goes and you're like, just.
Well, you have your face on.
Yeah, I like turn it back on, but no!
But like, do they decide the amount of curtain calls beforehand? Because sometimes I find that I've been to shows where like the applause is kind of dying, but they insist on having the curtain calls again. It's like a bit awkward because like, the audience is like, no, we don't want to applaud anymore. We're kind of done. And but then you do a curtain call and it's like, okay, we have to like applaud and be polite because we appreciate you, but we also want to go home.
Yeah. So I have definitely asked our stage manager that before, like, is there a certain number? And he said, like, no, we just listen for how the audience is reacting, and then we base it on that. But I've had discussions with so many of my friends in different companies, and I feel like it's a worldwide thing of sometimes they push it too long. And we've definitely had conversations of like, what was the most embarrassing curtain call you've ever had? And it's sad how many people I've talked to that they say like the audience actually stopped applauding because it just went too long and they were beyond the point of being polite, and then the dancers like, and I think everyone's experienced it, like before the curtain's all the way down, the audience stops and you're still posing because you know there's another meter or like meter and a half that you have to wait for the curtain to get down. So and you can feel it like from stage, you can feel it when you were like, these people are clapping because they're polite. Like the enthusiasm is gone behind this.
It's like, I don't want your sympathy claps. I just want to go. It's like, don't give me that.
Yeah, I really hate pity claps. Like, don't give those to me. Just close the curtain and let me go home.
Like, leave me with my dignity.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things I did want to talk to you about is that I think you touched on this, that, you know, you do with anxiety. I don't want to use the word struggle, but you do with anxiety, and that's something I deal with too. But for you, interestingly, you said that it's not necessarily something that's been affecting you a lot during this time. Am I inferring that correctly?
Yeah. It's because normally I can have a lot of anxiety. It's something that's gotten better throughout my career. Obviously, with time, you start to recognize like what's triggering anxiety for you, and then kind of how to work around it. When I was younger, so when I was a teenager, and then also maybe the first four years of my career, sometimes I would have panic attacks. It wasn't very often, but maybe, or like an anxiety attack. In the middle of a rehearsal, it would happen maybe once a year, twice a year. I had one. I think the last one I can remember, I was maybe 22 or something, 7 years ago. We were doing a run through of a production in the studio, and during the run through, I started getting in my head, and I started thinking about, I was really exhausted. I felt and my body was exhausted, and then I started thinking about how I wasn't really executing the steps the way I should, and it wasn't looking good, and that started building up. And then the way anxiety works, like it started, you know, my heart rate was going up more, so I was physically getting more tired, and everything started accumulating. And then I just like, I remember we like finished a run of a part, and I was going off stage, and I was supposed to have just like a minute, and then I would start dancing again. And then in that minute of waiting on the side, I just started having my anxiety attack, and I started crying, and I couldn't breathe. And it's funny how it can just like catch you. But it's something that I learned, like, what are the signs of it's coming on, and learning for me, like, how to disconnect from that and kind of nip it at the bud sometimes. So I haven't had problems with that. And I'm really surprised also it hasn't affected me so much in quarantine, but I really attribute that to probably having so many other things to take care of, that if I was really only focusing on dance, maybe certain feelings would creep in that I'm not feeling right now.
So is it almost like you found, because what I find, I mean, my journey with lockdown has kind of been like an up and down thing, where it's like, I think I'm feeling fine and I think I'm not, and it's just the uncertainty. But I was talking to my therapist about it, and it was a lot, and she said, you know, a lot of people are struggling with anxiety now because of the fact that when you're stuck at home and it's like the loss of routine, and a lot of what routine is to people is coping mechanisms. It gives them a coping mechanism to do with like things like anxiety and perfection, and that's definitely the case for me, you know, for like having a routine with like, say, and I think maybe, you know, professional dancers or student dancers definitely struggle with this. It's like having, say, a routine where like I go for my ballet class or my exercise class. That's like a coping mechanism, because it's like, it's something you're used to doing. It's something that's important to you, or something that helps you feel like you're doing something to work on yourself or like manage your perfectionism. And then suddenly when like that's gone, it's not having the almost like the crutch that you have anymore, just like leads to like your anxiety like going up because there's nothing else to control it. So because for you, is it that you've continue? Sorry,
I was just gonna say interrupt you. Because routine, just to tie on to what you say of like how routine can be a coping mechanism, routine feels productive. I think that's also the comforting side of routine is it feels like even though you might not be happy with yourself, or you might not have fully accepted yourself just as you are, flaws and all, having a routine feels like, but I am actively doing something about it, so it will get better. I think it maybe gives hope for people when you have a routine of like every day I'm going and working on something, and then when that's kind of pulled out from underneath you, that I think you become very aware of how much of a crutch, like you said.
Like it's the reassurance. Like for example, for me, it's like doing things like ballet helps me. Like you said, reassures me that I'm doing something good. Like if I didn't have a good day at work today, at least I knew that I went for a jog or did ballet or gymnastics or something on that side that helped me feel good. And then like there's also the fact that for me, when you do, and I think maybe dancers have the same thing because we're all perfectionists. It's like in like my job, maybe even it's not dancing, it's like if I do well, then there's a reassurance for me that I'm doing something productive and good for myself. And then now when there's very little there's so much uncertainty that you don't get that sort of feedback. Like say for me, I think all small businesses are suffering. So for me, I don't necessarily see the same returns that I get from my work. Then it's like, that's like my metric of that reassures me I'm doing okay is kind of gone. And then like my other coping mechanism that helps me to cope when I'm feeling like I'm not doing well in this area is also, well, it's not gone, but it's different. You know what I mean? So for you, then I would be interested to know, like, do you think it's because you've sort of built yourself up to a place where you don't rely so much on these coping mechanisms, or that you've diversified them a lot more so that you're not putting maybe all your eggs in one basket in that sense? Or what is it for you that you think?
I think it's probably a little bit of combination of both. Definitely, not putting all your eggs in one basket. I do find the more I have other things in my life that balance out dance or like my work and focus, the easier everything is. And then in the end, the happier I am with work, because that sort of like way too much attention on one thing, it doesn't build up, so it doesn't become a negative thing as quickly. So so the more I have like social contact with people, as much as I love my colleagues and I love my dance friends, the more social contact I have with people that I don't work with, typically the happier I am, and the more I enjoy my time with friends at work, where it's very easy when you're around the same people all the time, if there's one negative thing tied to the atmosphere where you are. So if people are upset about casting for a ballet or something, and then you're around all of your friends and everyone's upset about casting, then it just like you feed off of each other, and it turns it into something so much bigger than it needs to be. Where if I have also my friends outside of work, and I go to work and I'm like, okay, cast list came out, I'm not happy, I go out to meet up with friends who know nothing about dance, it doesn't even matter to them. Like to them, that what is that? They don't even understand like how to cast list work, or so socially, but also hobby wise, doing different things. That if it also ties into the like, physically when you feel good, it also affects mentally how you feel. Like you feel like, I sweat today, I moved, like I'm happy. My body feels good, so my mind feels good. And if you can't dance, like also having other physical activities, people doing like yoga, or I started doing CrossFit now. I never did CrossFit in my life because I was like, those people are so extreme. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm going to get injured. But because it's all done inside online, it's like with things you have at home. So it's like you take like a book sack and you put some books on it and you put it on your back, and then you're doing like squats. So it's like very, very accessible, non-intimidating things. And that it makes me sweat a lot. And that's one of the things I like about dancing, is like, I'm not such a person who really likes bar. Like I do like bar.
Right.
I do like bar, like some aspects of bar, but I like moving in the center, and I like kind of the sporty side of ballet.
Right, yeah.
So then to do something that really is like just sport, it kind of feeds. It doesn't feed like totally what I'm missing of dance, but it does give me that little bit of like, oh, endurance. It really requires stamina. After I'm like, there's sometimes in some of these exercises, I'm like dying and I can't go on. And then like through my computer, there's this CrossFit coach who's like, come on, you can do it. Don't stop. And I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping. And then, so it definitely helps kind of being a little reflective on like asking myself, what do I miss? And like, why do I feel not fulfilled right now because of this change in situation, and seeing how can I fill those gaps? And it doesn't necessarily have to be with dance. And like I was mentioning before to you that because there was renovation going on in my kitchen. And it still needed to be done. I was like, I'm just gonna like from YouTube learn how to tile a backsplash or how to build some cabinets. That also kind of fulfilled a like creative side in me, because I built cabinets and I could kind of make them custom measurements as I wanted. So I got to sketch out designs, make sure everything's like measured up right, and then putting it together, doing kind of crafty things with my hands, as painting them and making sure aesthetically it looked the way I want. That's kind of started fulfilling a little creative side of me. So it's weird how these pieces come together, but it's definitely like the combination, doing several different things, but also being reflective and trying to identify like, what am I missing? What is making me feel bad right now? And then like seeing, okay, how can I kind of resolve this with something else?
So there's two questions I want to ask you, because I feel like these two questions come up pretty often without lockdown in the dance world, but in the ballet world. But now, you know, that everybody's routines are disrupted or limited, I think it's even more exacerbated, which is that one, people always wondering like, how are you, you know, in the limited circumstances, you know, maintaining, like be able to manage, not worrying too much about like your body image and your technique, because, you know, obviously you're not rehearsing 6, 5, whatever hours a day, and then people worry, will I lose like my fitness and my technique? And second, like, what is that going to mean for my body? Because there's so much, I think normal people, I mean, like everybody struggles with body image, and it's even more exacerbated in ballet.
Definitely.
And then the other question that people struggle with is like, how do you find that self-motivation to like keep up with, you know, your exercises? Even like you said, if it's not necessarily ballet, it's still, you know, there's a communal aspect to fitness and activity that I think is very important and can't be discounted. Like even if you're in a company and you're having a bad day, you know, you see your colleagues around you working and that motivates you. You're in this space, or even, you know, you're having a bad day, you have somebody you can like have a giggle with or commiserate with in the bar. They're like feeling grumpy too, you know. So for you, like, how are you dealing with self-motivate? How are you finding ways to self-motivate, and how are you dealing with that body image and technique struggle that a lot of people seem to be dealing with now?
Yeah, well, with the self-motivation thing, that I also found it difficult. Like the first 2 weeks, I just was doing class on my own, like kind of doing exercises I felt, and that was already more for me to kind of help control. Obviously, it's frustrating that you don't have a proper dance floor, or I didn't. You don't have a normal bar. I use my fireplace mantle as my bar. Like there's
gotta make do right. Yeah.
I mean, it's more solid than like an ironing board. Some people were using an ironing board, and I was like, at least I have a mantle. Like there's, you know, some advantages to like parts of the house that I never used before. So, I have to say, so the first 2 weeks, I was just doing class on my own and trying to figure out, what can I do in my space? Before I tried to like put myself into some online class and follow a class, let me just be aware of, okay, what are my spatial limitations, and what's it like with my floor, to prevent myself from getting frustrated trying to do something without really being aware of my surroundings. So I did that, but I have to say it was kind of hard to motivate myself to do. I wasn't doing a class every day. In a week, I did like 3 classes, and I was like, oh, should I be doing a class every day? I don't know.
Do you feel guilty when you skipped classes? Because I know some people, like I sometimes do exercise guilt too.
Yeah, at the beginning, the first couple of weeks, I felt guilty when I was not doing a ballet class or not doing something physical. Like if I just sat around, well, okay, not at first. The first 5 days, I treated it like a Sunday where I stayed on my couch all day. Yeah. I stayed on my couch all day, and because we had just been doing like really long days at the theater because we were the week before a premiere, so we were doing all these really long tech rehearsals. So I was like, Shelby, you need to relax anyway. Like, you need a rest. We don't know where this is gonna go, so go ahead, take a couple days. And then by day 5 of like Sunday, like 5 Sundays in a row of I never left my couch. I was just watching TV and like didn't do anything. I said, okay, Shelby, like, you've had enough Sundays. You need to like maybe start moving again and get some sort of rhythm into your life. And so that's when I started trying to do class and figure out my area. But then I was still finding like, oh, it's really hard for me to motivate myself by myself, especially with like, it was weird because there's so many classes offered and you had all of the like greatest teachers in the world doing live classes for free. And I was like, why am I not jumping on this? Like, what does this say about me that I'm not super eager to do it?
Yeah.
And then I just realized, because then a friend who has nothing to do with dance invited me to join a CrossFit class. And I was like, okay, maybe. And I went and it was via Zoom. So it was with a teacher that could see me and I could see everyone else in the class. And it was so, like, at first I'd never been to a CrossFit class before, so I left the camera turned off. And then halfway through the class, my friend wrote me and he was like, why is your camera off? And I was like, I don't know anyone in the class, because it was people from a studio that they usually in person, they worked out together. And I was like, I don't know anyone and I never taken a class. So I just wanted to follow along, like, without people seeing me. And then like we had like a water break, and then to the teacher in the class, he said like, oh, my friend is here, but she doesn't want to turn on her computer because she's shy and she doesn't know anyone. And then I was like, oh no. And so then,
called out, girl.
Yeah, I got called out, and then the teacher was like, Shelby, and I like had to like boop, and like turn on my screen, and I was like, hi. And then the teacher was super nice, and he was like, yeah, we're here to motivate each other, and if I can see you, I can correct you and can make sure that you're doing things properly and you don't hurt yourself at home, but also like seeing each other, it gives us a sense of community. And I was like, oh, it's really true, it's nice. And so then that's when, like, the next day I wrote, because I stayed so motivated and I stayed so positive, and I left. By leaving, I mean, I turned off my computer. Like, I left the class. I left the class feeling really satisfied and also just really happy. Like, emotionally, I felt happy that I had some, even if it was virtually, I had contact with people.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, what I need is I don't need to be following a class on like Instagram Live where I'm watching someone give class. I need to be somehow in this group setting, this like group motivation setting. So I wrote the dancers in our company, because we weren't doing class together, just because of the way Belgian law works. Like, our company cannot provide us Zoom classes or something, because it would mean that we are working while we are supposed to be temporarily unemployed because of like force majeure in Belgium is like most of the companies put everyone on temporary unemployment. And then you have problems with insurance, that we're not covered if we hurt ourselves at home, blah, blah, blah. So I just wrote everyone and I said, would anyone want to do class together? If I buy like a Zoom Pro account so we can do class, would anyone want to do? And then a bunch of people in the company said yes. And now like every week I send out a weekly schedule that we volunteer. Some dancers teach one day. And now even our ballet masters contacted me and said, hey, I heard you're doing classes. If you want us teaching, we can also teach. So our ballet masters will teach. We have different people we know, like friends of friends, teaching. And that has been like my main source of motivation. Is I enjoy seeing my colleagues that I wouldn't see normally. I enjoy dancing with other people and dancing with other people that I know. Like, this familiarity is really comforting. So that's certainly helped with my motivation to keep working and keep some normalcy somehow through it by doing that, and not just following something on my phone that I don't have any kind of personal connection to.
Yeah.
And then like the second part of your question that you're saying, like, how do you deal with body image, that, obviously we're not working as much as we normally do. So the body might change, or my thought about it is I used to have like, everyone has body issues in different ways. And mine that still affects me sometimes is like, I have this like complex about my quads, just because of how much when I was younger as a teenager, every ballet school told me my quads were overdeveloped and I'm too muscular. They're always telling me, like, you're too muscular, you need to do more Pilates. I was like, fed the Pilates card 20,000 times throughout my education of like, Pilates will reshape your body, which is true. Like, Pilates is amazing and can do great things, but also your body has like its shape to a certain extent. You can only like remold your body so much.
It's like somebody saying, hey, you gotta change your smile. Like, I came with this. Like, this is the package to you guys.
Yeah. Exactly.
I can like fix my teeth, but my smile's not gonna like maybe align my teeth more or something. But like the smile itself, the essence is not gonna change.
Yeah. So I that's always been my thing, is like the shape of my muscles, and like, if I used to have all this fear, like, if I do certain exercises, it's going to build up, it's going to bulk muscle, and that's like the opposite of what I need. And so it's also probably why I never had a gym membership. I never did any kind of like sports things. Like if I did any cross training, it was always Pilates or yoga or something that was lengthening. But luckily, I have to say, my company is very accepting, like body wise.
Amazing.
We have dancers with very different bodies, also dance wise, like very different strengths, because so Royal Ballet Flanders is like the national ballet company in Belgium, but our director is Sidila Rishikawi. He comes from a contemporary dance background. Mostly what we do is a mix of contemporary dance or new ballets, like newly redone ballet productions. And so it's much more open-minded, and we don't have too much the kind of cookie cutter ideal that can come sometimes associated with classical story ballets and expectation of we've seen how it was before, so this is how it should be. So being in an environment like that definitely already helps with body image. And then since I'm at home, I just keep reminding myself, like, you don't need to be in tip-top shape. No one's expecting you to go on stage. No one expects of anyone. Like, we're at home. It's not the same conditions. So we shouldn't put that expectation on ourselves. Like, I wouldn't like see Roberto Bolle and be like, tomorrow, if we were out on the street and everyone was out of quarantine, be like, could you do like a run through of Giselle Variation for me, just because I love you so much? Like, even from the greatest dancers in the world, you don't expect them to be in their best shape after coming out of this. So why would you hold yourself to that also? So kind of reminding myself of that, also coming out of this, it's going to take a while to go back to normal. So knowing, we have that time to get back to where we were physically, like stamina-wise, or how fit we feel, that there's no rush for anything. But just in general, with acceptance of body shape and that sort of thing, kind of getting rid of mirrors as much as possible is nice. And then when you do
physical reminders of it, like, it's helpful. Getting
rid of mirrors. And then when you do use mirrors, if I start to notice that, like, I'm checking myself in the mirror and I start getting critical of my body shape and not my technique, I try to remind myself, like, no, okay, if you're going to be criticizing and correcting yourself, is it something that's productive for your dancing? Or is it just simply based on the shape of your body? Like, are you upset because you think, okay, I'm not using my rotation, I could engage my muscles more? Or are you upset because you're like, from this angle, it looks like my butt's a bit bigger because it's not turned out and it's not like sitting flat. So also trying to question yourself when these thoughts start coming into your mind, like questioning yourself, like, what am I really judging here? Am I really judging like the things that ballet is about? It's about like correcting technique and kind of advancing your technique? Or am I criticizing my body, which isn't correcting anything? It's not constructive at all.
I mean, that's interesting because I obviously also have my body image struggles. For you, it's quads. For me, it's like the stomach. Like, it's not what I don't have, it's the fact that I always want. So that's the struggle that I have. But interestingly, like, I have the same approach with you when it comes to doing ballet, which is that whenever I'm looking in the mirror doing class, like, I know when it's a sticking point for people just staring at themselves in the mirror. But for me, that's actually when I have the least problems looking at my body, because I'm focusing on like the stuff I need to fix. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I definitely agree with you about the idea of like, maybe even if you don't remove all mirrors, just consciously try not to check yourself so much. Because that's when like the insecurity comes in of like, oh, my body shape, something changing. And like, maybe just not, again, you know, it's all these external metrics that we use to reassure ourselves that we're doing something right or that we're on the right track when, you know, and so maybe just not relying on them so much and looking at other, and maybe like using other things like checking, you know, how do we feel after like a workout, or how do we feel today after like making it through like a good day or a bad day. Maybe trying to like focus on those metrics instead of like the, you know, the simple shallow things like, I mean, that, to be fair, everybody is worried about like the physical aspects of it or something. Maybe could be helpful, because, you know, you could look in great shape, but if your mental health is like gone, then like I always think that there's kind of no point in being like this super lean, like crazily working out dancer if like you're actually not healthy, and health is mental and physical. And I think you will agree with me on that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking of like also another thing of when I start to get maybe too obsessed with how does my body look, trying to correct it, or not being happy of like, oh, you know, I'm putting on a little bit of weight being at home, and I can feel like when I do this movement, I feel like in my back, like there's like a little bit of extra cushion there, and it's getting in the way of my arabesque, and like those sorts of thoughts that come into mind. Is then also just thinking like, telling myself like, Shelby, stop, and then pick something totally different to focus on. Like, obviously, okay, like this is bothering me because I'm feeling like a change in my body and it's frustrating. So then be like, okay, Shelby, so like stop. You're not going to think of your arabesque and like the height of your arabesque anymore. You're going to think of like the length in your arms, and like we're going to focus on port de bras right now. So just totally being like, Shelby, like don't do that. Don't be mean to yourself. Don't be so critical. You can still be, and then going back to this like comfort kind of coping thing, like you can still be productive. Let's work on something else that isn't upsetting you right now. And so then shifting the focus then to something that leaves you feeling good, like, oh, like, okay, I shifted the focus to my port de bras because that wasn't upsetting me, and then I finished the class being like, wow, I really feel coordinated in my upper body right now. Like, so leaving with a sense of satisfaction instead of leaving with through the whole class I was like struggling with this and I didn't like the way it felt, and I know it's because of I'm in quarantine and I'm not working, so it's not worked thoroughly the way it should be. And
I think there's something to be said even about just, and I think, you know, when we say these things, you know, it's stuff that as much as I say, I know I need to internalize more as well. It's a lot easier to be said than to be done. But but you know, I think one of the things that we have to remember is that we're kind of in a strange time, and sometimes like we should give ourselves credit almost for just getting through the day. Like sometimes, you know, and this is honestly, sometimes when discipline comes in, like there are times like I don't want to work out, man, but I'll just do it. And it's like I got to give myself credit because I didn't want to do it, and I got through everything I wanted to do. But then also maybe realizing the fact that I think it's some, and I think as you know, dancers and athletes can relate to this, is that you're so used to pushing your body to the point where it's exhausted that now, you know, it's not feasible to be like working out 5-6 hours a day. So and trying to reframe your mind and thinking that's actually like a good thing. It's a healthy thing to not feeling like you have no gas in the tank at the end of the day. You know, I mean, that's something that, you know, I think you can agree with, like we're both perfectionists, and I'm very much used to that idea of like, I gotta push until like I'm dying, and that's how I feel like I've done enough. And then, you know, now, you know, it's like I said, when you're not in the studio, when I'm not in like a gymnastic, I do gymnastics, so I'm not in a gymnastics gym, I'm not obviously going to be doing like the same 2 or whatever, 3 hours I'm doing. So maybe it's like an hour now. And it's like, I have to get used to the fact that it's healthy for my body not to be feeling like it's constantly tired. It's actually like a good thing. And, you know, it's honestly, I'm not saying that coronavirus is a great situation, but on the other hand, it's, if we kind of learn how to maybe adapt and like recognize how we can, what good changing up our routines can do for us, when we get out of it, maybe we'll be like mentally stronger and able to take care of ourselves better.
True. I mean, there definitely are silver linings. Like it's a very dark cloud that is, coronavirus, but there's definitely silver linings. And I think what you said, it's really spot on. Is maybe learning that like other ways of doing things are okay, and so that means that maybe you, instead of pressuring ourselves of like, oh, I have to fill my day, I have to do this much. Realizing like, oh, maybe I can be satisfied. Like I hope, especially for a lot of professional dancers, it gives everyone perspective on work-life balance, because I think a lot of us lack that, our work is our life. And hopefully with so much free time and basically being forced to, you cannot fill your day with dance. I mean, I know you can. I'm sure there's some people who are scheduling like full days of doing several classes back to back. But I think also indulging in, saying like, okay, this is a situation, it's out of my hands. And I'm going to kind of roll with it and see what I learn from it, and seeing like, oh, you know what, I actually enjoy, I never would take time to like cook a meal. I always did quick dinners because I was always tired, but oh, I really enjoy cooking, and I end up cooking like better quality food that then my body feels better after, because it's a really complete meal. Like, I don't know, I hope there's like little lessons that we can all learn and kind of discover things about ourselves with this time, that then when we get back to maybe our normal routine, we can find ways to incorporate that into the new normal and contribute to having like a healthier, balanced life.
I like how you're actually doing the CrossFit thing, because I think it's like it's almost like a good way for people to try different ways to keep themselves active. Because like you said, it is going to be something that will benefit you when you get back into work, because you're moving your body in a different way. It's an intense activity. You're building up strength and muscles and cardiovascular stamina in like a different way. So and at the same time, like you're doing something, you're switching it up, so you're not doing stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, and that kind of helps keep you motivated too.
Yeah, it's also nice. We when you're like going to dance class all the time, you're around other people who also have that same discipline, and they're going to dance class all the time, and so of course, no one's ever going to be the best. Like, dance is art, and it's all subjective, and you cannot say like one person is necessarily better than another. It's a matter of taste.
My boyfriend Roberto was the best.
Except for that. But when we get used to like, be it your job, or be it that you like regularly go to dance class, because of the discipline of going to a ballet class or any sort of dance class, sometimes we put expectation on ourselves of like, oh, okay, I know dance very well, and I expect so much of myself, where when you try something completely different, it's really kind of fine to be the worst in the class, because you're like, this is new to me, so I'm going to look and learn from other people, and I'm not going to expect myself to be like them right away. So it's kind of also refreshing, a way to approach doing something different. But then when you do something right, it's amazing. Like, when you do something well in ballet class, sometimes you can feel great, which is nice. But most of the time that kind of goes away quickly, because like, oh, but then I could have done this, or like, this is the other thing I got that. But you got to add like this little correction on top of it. Where I found like with CrossFit, like I have no clue what I was doing. I like didn't know how to lift weights. Like, I never lifted weights in my life, or like there's so many exercises I didn't know. And so it's really a learning process, which is keeping it interesting. But then there's like one exercise that they do that they're called pistols. And is it like a pistol squat, or am I completely off? With like the leg in front, and you squat down. Yeah. And I've never had a major injury, so I never did anything like that in rehab, but I'd seen friends of mine doing those exercises as rehabilitation. So I was like, oh, I know this. Okay, this is something that's useful for dance. Like, I've seen friends using it for rehab. And so, but for like most normal people, that's super difficult. I mean, it's difficult for us as well, but it's a super difficult exercise to do. Yeah. And so the first couple days we did it, it was kind of, I had to figure out coordination of it. And then I got it. And then I felt like, oh, okay, it kind of triggers the same muscles of when your leg gets really tired doing fouettes. And you just have to like really use your plie and like engage. Like, I started feeling the muscles, and I was like, oh, it was really interesting. And then in my Zoom class, like our teacher pointed out, like, do you see Shelby doing it? Like, Shelby, show us your pistols. And so I was showing how to do the pistol, and everyone was like, wow, amazing.
Wait,
And so
girl,
now,
are you doing the pistol squats unassisted? Just like straight down, straight up?
yeah.
Yes!
I had to build up.
That's what those squats are for, man. Screw everybody who said that you have the
Exactly.
squats. That's what it's for.
That's what those quads are for. They're for the pistols. And so then it's like, it's so nice. Like, I now have this little satisfaction I get, like, in my living room, like all these people in my class that them being like, great job, Shelby, like, amazing, you do that so well. And then it's something that's it's nice for morale, and it's silly. It's like one little exercise in a workout class I do that people are saying like, you do that one really well. Yeah. But it's something that, like, in ballet class, when I'm taking a bar with, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen right now. And so it's nice to find other ways, like other community things, and then learn things without expectation, and then see how maybe things that come natural to you kind of work well with it, and you feel good, like, oh, I can do that well. And yeah, it's the trying new things. I highly recommend it.
So we can expect you to do 100 pull-ups and 1,000 squats by the end of this lockdown, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna, like, press like 200 kilos, and I'm gonna be so ready. I'm gonna get back to the studio, and someone's gonna come in and be like, okay, so we've decided, like, casting will change. Like, Shelby will be now dancing the men's part since her.
Yes, I was gonna say, so, like, all like, the men's parts.
Shelby will do all of them, everything, especially like the partner heavy work. She will do all the lifting. Yeah.
But I also want to talk about the thing where you touched on about like dancers having a lot of free time now, and I also feel like and I want to get your perspective on this, because you do, like you said, you have so many diverse interests besides dance. But then there's also the idea of, like, there's this pressure to be productive. Like, there's so many online classes now. People feel like, oh, I have to take advantage of it. And, like, dancers now, because they have more time. Some people have more time, whether or not they're dancers. Maybe you're like somebody who's furloughed or whatever. You feel like you have more time. And it's like, oh, then I should be working on, like, personal development. In dance, I should be working on building my brand, because I see everybody else doing it. And there's, like, so much of that pressure to, like, I think it's especially in this age of social media, to, like, keep up with what everybody else is doing, and it's so hard not to compare your productivity level to somebody else's. And I want to get your perspective on that, especially because, like you said, you have a lot of interest, and I think, honestly, that's it's incredibly hard to do as a ballet dancer, is to still work and then have interest outside of it while you're still doing this Biscuit Ballerina thing, which people don't realize, like, doing stuff on the internet, it's a 60-second video, but it takes up so much effort.
It takes so much time. Yeah.
So it's like doing all that, and at the same time, like, not burning out and being tired. So, like, for you, how do you manage that? Or have you found a balance, or have you, like, are you like, no, I have not?
So actually, it like goes back to before quarantine, like, already talking about, like, kind of balancing time management, and then feeling like, oh, you got to keep up. So Biscuit Ballerina, for example, it actually takes a lot of time, and I get so many people writing in, and I try to respond to as many people as possible. But at a certain point, I had to accept, like, okay, I'm just one person by myself. It's not like I have an assistant answering emails and messages for me. And so in the end, I feel bad, but I can't respond to everyone's message. I just don't have the hours in the day to spend on my phone sending messages back to people who write in. So obviously it means, unfortunately, I do miss, like, a lot of funny videos that people send me, because I just don't have time to look through all of them. But something I tried to remind myself, because there was a point when, like, Biscuit Ballerina kept growing, and it was demanding a lot of time to try and keep up with messages I was getting and managing content I was putting out, and trying to also put, like, better quality content, and taking time to edit videos, and not just, because at the beginning I would just, like, film a variation and then cut it into pieces and put one each day with a few hashtags. And then now I started saying, okay, I would do these little, like, compilation videos, and, like, Falling Friday, and editing and trying to make it musical, and then also trying to curate certain themes, saving photos of, like, all these people when they were kids, but all of them stretching or all of them jumping, and trying to find, like, themes and make it a little bit better quality of how it's presented. But it takes more time.
Yeah.
And I still have, like, I still have my day job, you know, like no one pays me for Biscuit Ballerina. Instagram doesn't pay. Like it's not something that there's a return on it. And so in the end, the way I started balancing, like I was getting kind of frustrated with myself that I wasn't keeping up. And it's that feeling kind of modern day society is, there's always going to be someone who's like super productive and they're still doing things and you feel like I'm falling behind. I see all these people around me like putting out content every day, or maybe in the sense of dance, like I see dancers every day, they're posting videos of them taking these classes. And so you see how productive other people are.
It's that feeling of like thinking that I'm failing, but everybody else is succeeding.
Yeah. And it's not real. We all know at this point, like social media is not real. That probably someone took like one day they were feeling motivated. They took like a couple classes and then every day they posted like different ones of those different classes. So it's like, they're probably not doing class every day. Like maybe they are, maybe they're not. Doesn't matter. It's not reality. Yeah. You don't know their life. You're not there. You're not present with them.
Yeah.
They might be completely miserable while they're doing it and they're just forcing themselves to. So also understanding like you don't really know that person's story. So don't compare yourself to that person because there's no way, unless you're in their shoes, there's no way to know how they're feeling. So there's no point in putting that up on a pedestal and being like, I would be happier or I would be better, more successful if I was doing that the way they're doing, if I was keeping as busy as they're keeping busy. So with me, with like trying to juggle different things, taking care of things in my apartment, when it comes to renovation, trying to still do other activities outside of work and see friends, and then trying to fully commit and do my best at work with the ballet and then running Biscuit Ballerina. I made a decision like with Biscuit Ballerina that I don't do like sponsored content. I don't make any money off of it. And I never have been paid for Biscuit Ballerina to put something online. I only share like, mostly if you see like that I give credit to brands, it's all small brands that I know. It's like dancers or former dancers or small business owners like kind of hustling, trying to make their business grow. And so then I'm like more than happy to help them out because it's difficult, like how you get exposure today. Like it's difficult to reach people when the internet is so oversaturated with many different things. So usually it's kind of like friends of friends or people I've met. And then they ask, oh, can I send you something? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. I'll, because I like helping like individual people. But as long as I'm not being paid for anything I have to do on Biscuit Ballerina, it helps take away that feeling of guilt and obligation of I have to maintain it. Like there was a moment in kind of January and February where I was very busy because I went to stage a ballet for the first time. Like a choreographer I had worked with asked me to teach a ballet on another company. And it was a lot of homework and a lot of prep to learn like 12 different dancers, positions in a piece and everything they did. And so I was like, okay, like I'll post like Falling Friday. I love Falling Friday. So I'll make sure like still on Fridays, I put that up and maybe like one funny post during the week. But for 2 months, I didn't respond to any emails. I didn't spend time responding to messages and DMs, like all these things. I was like, you know what? I don't owe anyone anything because I made this account just for fun and to try and like hopefully spread a good message. And I'm not working for anyone. I don't owe anyone anything. And so finding ways to get rid of that guilt of like, ask yourself, do I really do it? Is there really any obligation here? Or am I just putting the obligation on myself? So
but I think that is a hard thing to let go of, isn't it? Especially when you're a perfectionist. Like I can understand. I think it's a little bit different for me because this is part of my full-time job, like Crown Victory. But I can understand like where you're coming from in the sense of, you know, the reason why we push ourselves so hard, like as people who, you know, we own our brand. So in the sense we don't have anybody to answer to. But then it's the thing where it's like, but I have to answer to myself and I have to answer to my expectations, and I'm responsible for whether or not I succeed or fail. I think even not just on like social media, but like in the sense of being an artist, I think that is like the burden people carry. It's like because you're a perfectionist and that makes you inherently like more wanting to control things. It's the idea that like I am entirely responsible for like whether I succeed or fail, and I need to like do everything as much as I can to put myself in the position to succeed. And then sometimes, like we were saying, just that can end up being a situation where you just push yourself too hard and force yourself to do too much, and then it kind of goes downhill from there.
I think like also in all aspects of life, so not just in dancing, but also in the way we work. Like even if you work an office job or something not physical in the sense of like a sport, we can still look at Olympians as like a really good example of how to work if you want to be super efficient at something. It's like, okay, you're dedicated, but they are so strict with making sure they rest enough. And I think a lot of people, when they put expectation on themselves to succeed at something, they don't give themselves the rest time. They just work. And I think about, like, I have a very good friend that she was a professional swimmer. And before I met her, I didn't know that like swimmers will go like 2 weeks without swimming before a big swim meet.
It's and the pacing idea, isn't it? You pace yourself to peak at the right time.
Yeah. And I was like, what? And I was like, we have a premiere, like we work more hours than ever the week before the premiere. And she was like, that doesn't make any sense. You go into the premiere the most exhausted you've ever been.
Yeah.
Like, but we've been working. So like, and so looking at Olympians and being like, wow, actually you are more efficient. Like if you give yourself the time to physically or mentally rest, like take distance from something and then come back to it, for sure you're going to be more efficient. And so that's also a nice reminder of like when we start to overwork yourself, think like, oh, actually, okay, if I feel like I'm exhausted, letting myself rest will make it easier when I get back.
And I think that's especially applicable during this time because I sort of hit the same struggle when this thing started. And like I said, you know, all small business everywhere, they all take a hit. And then you're like, feeling like you have to work more to sort of make up for that. And like, you see like more people online now have to take advantage of it. And then just like also dealing with like the personal mental health aspect of like lockdown, which let's face it is depressing for anybody. And it just really like just took a toll on me and then I had to have my parents keep reminding me like, if you burn out, if you get too tired, when everything starts lifting and everybody's ready to go, you'll be the one who's exhausted and you'll be the one who's left behind because you will not have, taken care of yourself enough. If you really want to be the person who is just completely exhausted and not able to then take advantage of the opportunities that come when people are ready to, start dancing again and start, maybe as customers start looking at like wanting to buy things to make themselves feel good again, from my perspective, or like from a dancer's perspective, when like, do you really want to be completely burned out and exhausted mentally and physically, when it's time for you to get into the studio and start working again? Sort of that kind of thing. And I think for me, it's also been a process of letting go. And actually, that's why I've been starting this podcast, because then my focus started shifting to, okay, instead of like worrying too much about like, financials, why don't I just focus more on like, what do I want to do with my brand instead creatively that is I've always wanted to do that I find fulfilling. And maybe let's just focus on that instead, because then I'm still like doing work, but I'm doing work that I find more creatively fulfilling that I may not otherwise have the opportunity to do. And I think, we were talking about it's kind of like that process of learning to let go and like reshift our focus and realizing that we can't, we can't go 150% all at once. Like you said, it's, we got to find the downtime to rest and pace ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And also like what you're saying is, okay, how do I contribute to this? I think it's, and reshifting the focus, it's like the same as in ballet class when you start getting frustrated with one thing, like, okay, shift the focus. Okay, I'm going to work on this now. And it still feels productive. So it still is comforting. It's still satisfying. Like, okay, this is, I'm not just killing time. And if we can also think of rest that way also is like really acknowledging like the rest is productive.
Rest.
The rest might not,
and it's productive.
Yeah, we might label too much, like we label rest as like laziness or, not productive. Rest is productive because you need the rest to facilitate like higher productivity later. So just when you're feeling lazy, and you'd be like, no, this rest is like benefiting me.
I mean, it's almost like for people, like ballet is an industry of perfectionists, and it's almost harder for people like us to rest. It takes more discipline for people like us to rest and to push ourselves, which is kind of strange to say, but it's true, you know?
Yeah. I definitely do not. I'm like probably one of the worst of my friends. Like, I do not sleep enough. You see it in my face, like it's the morning here. You see it in my face. I don't.
No, you're losing. Because it's morning glow. Shut up, Shelby. You're perfect everywhere.
But I if I get on a roll doing something late at night, like the hours don't matter. I'll just keep working. I'll just keep working, and then even though it's like 3 a.m, I'll be telling myself like, Shelby, you should really go to sleep, but I'll be like, you're on a roll. Just keep going. Like, you're getting stuff done. When really I should probably tell myself like, go to sleep and do it tomorrow. It's also okay.
And then you suffer later, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, I feel that. Have you ever done the thing, because like I was talking to you about this earlier, like we're two people who really try to use our platform to talk about mental health, but have you ever done the thing where it's like, because there's so much, we put so much obligation on ourselves to produce content, have you ever done the thing where you put out something that's like, you hope makes people feel good, but you feel like crap inside? Because I've done that.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm super picky with like content that I put out. And so there's definitely I don't know if I've ever put out anything and really felt like bad about it after.
Oh, not about it, but like, say you're not actually feeling, you're not feeling really good that day, but you're putting out something that's
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah. I was trying to think if like maybe I felt like something didn't live up to what I was hoping it would, of like having a strong enough thing. Right. But so I've definitely been in like places like maybe a week that's just been a bad week and I'm not feeling good, and then I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite that I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna put out something that's got like a positive message, and I'm like behind my phone and I'm like, no, actually no, today I just want to like stay in bed, and then I'm putting out something like, it doesn't matter, like you can be happy doing whatever you want, and then like, I'm not happy right now, like, I hate everything. Yeah, I hate everything, and but it's also been funny because it's weird. It's a strange sensation when you're like trying to constantly be like a sense of like a humorous outlet for people, and trying to, in my content, it's constantly like silly and goofy, and there's certainly days where I don't feel silly, and so those are the days that it's like hardest for me to come up with hashtags, because like the whole thing was, when I started Biscuit Ballerina, I didn't know what a hashtag did. Like I just thought they were so ridiculous, and I was like, what is a hashtag? And so that's why like I started with Biscuit Ballerina, just doing like the typical hashtags everyone did, but kind of ironically. Like legs, feet, lines, ballet. All these things, like Motivation Monday, and I was like, what is, and then that's also probably part of the reason why like Biscuit Ballerina grew so quickly, was I didn't realize that it's because of hashtags that people can find things.
Right.
I was totally oblivious to everything. I was so naive. I didn't know how social media worked.
No, I mean, like I know that you're just like, I'm just gonna put stuff out that you just put it out, and you just like, you don't know what you're doing, but you kind of like it, and so you hope other people like it too.
Yeah. And so then I was like, the whole use of hashtags, but then so on days when I'm like just not feeling it, when I'm not feeling funny, and I'm not feeling like peppy and humorous, it's really hard to like come up with captions. It's easier to put out like the videos or the photos, because mostly those are things that I either made myself ahead of time or people submitted, and I could admit like, oh my gosh, that's so funny, I can recognize that it's funny. But then to put like a witty or funny or ironic caption with it, and then put some like funny hashtags to go with it, that's where I feel it, where I'm like, Shelby, you're not really in the mood to be sharing this sort of content right now, because your mental state is not parallel with like the kind of content you're putting out today. But it's okay. I mean, it happens. We're all allowed to have like our like down days and up days.
And I think we were talking about this before the podcast started. It's like, because I would do that, and then like after a while, like you said, I feel like a hypocrite, and then so like maybe I'll post something where I'm like, I'm going through this right now, and I'm not feeling so good, and but this is my perspective, and I'm hoping I'm going to try and get through this. But I just want you guys to know that, again, because social media is curated, I just want you to know that, like, there's a human behind here, and I have bad days too, like everybody else, and I have bad periods. But then, I think we were talking about, how can we talk about mental health in a way that's like not, constantly like hitting people over the head with it. And that's the struggle I have to, because it's like, I feel like if I talk about it too much, like, is it just going to get in my head? Is it like just talking, like, is it just hitting people over the head with it ad nauseum? Like, does anybody really want to keep hearing about this? You know what I mean? But then at the same time, it's like, I know some people appreciate it, but struggling to like find that balance of like, I don't want to always seem like I'm depressed, because I'm not, but like I do talk about it because it's important to, you know what I mean? And there are periods where I just, am depressed, but it's just like, so it's trying to find that balance of like we were talking about earlier, talking about mental health
because it's just not something that people are used to speaking about. And also I can understand, like, there's like the two sides to talking about mental health, that there's the side that it's like uplifting because you can relate to other people, you can exchange information, there's a sense of community, and there's like great things that can come from discussion. But also for some people that they are already dealing with things on their own, and they don't want a reminder of it. So they're like, I don't want to hear about it. So for different people, it's like hearing about mental health and hearing about anxiety, depression, or different things. It's they either do or they don't. And so I think that's why it's like really important to kind of tap into how can we discuss this, and how can we discuss this in a meaningful way that it might not turn into like a Debbie Downer, that it feels like a heavy thing. It can feel like a something that's going somewhere. Like, this discussion is productive. This isn't a discussion that's just like festering and like talking about the bad, but it's a type of discussion that can be uplifting. And
I think it's like you said, it's got to be constructive. I don't know what your approach for that is. Like mine, when you say you have trouble like talking about it, I think for me, the hardest part about it is being vulnerable, because you're putting yourself out there for judgment. But my approach, I always find the best way is to like be honest about what I'm struggling with, but also not necessarily like pretend that everything's going to be okay, but also just sending people the message that I'm going to keep going and I'm not going to give up. And I hope that you won't either, because, for me, a lot of why I talk about it is because I know what it's like to feel like, to feel like you're the only one struggling with something like this. When it's actually not true. And if I had realized that a lot earlier, that I wasn't the only one, like, dealing with the stuff I was dealing with like an eating disorder and depression and stuff, I would have felt a lot better.
I think I like what you said about like not necessarily making it like a positive thing, but kind of making it a hopeful thing. It's like the tone I try to always approach it with is that it's like relatable, and then there's always the like beam of hope attached to it. That it does get better, or there are other people who understand, like something that's a message of like hope tied to any subject that I bring up. And I think also because people have their own problems, and they're also different. So I cannot have experienced everything that you have experienced. Like, we might not have the same feelings. And so that was one of the really big points that I was like, okay, if I just keep talking about myself, this is only my experience. And although it like opens up a dialogue for people to talk about their experiences, I do have a platform now. And so maybe there are people willing to share their experiences on that platform. And so that has offered, it's been nice that I've been able to display like a variety of different things that maybe something I say doesn't resonate with people. And so they would be like, like, stop talking to me about mental health, just put up like your funny videos, and like they don't want anything to do with mental health. But if I can get different people talking about different things, and I have one friend who has a thyroid problem, and that caused her to gain weight, and struggling with that as a professional dancer, or having another friend of mine that he on my blog spoke about suffering from severe depression, and then talking about like medication and his experience with going on medication for it versus getting off medication and seeing what was best for him in his career. Like that's something I could not speak of. Like neither of those situations have I experienced, and can I share my thoughts on it? So being able to talk to other dancers. And so this discussion keeps happening, but every time I can bring it up, I bring it up in a different way because it's from a different person's perspective with a different person's experience. And hopefully each time it'll resonate with a different person in my like following on social media. And hopefully that will build some better connection. And,
because,
you know.
People for us, our experiences with like things like anxiety and perfectionism, but that's mental health is like a whole range of issues, and lots of people struggle with different things whether or not they're a dancer or not. And so like you know, like you said, like I don't have experience with a thyroid problem, but maybe like you put that out there and somebody else does, and they're like, oh, okay, I see something that I can relate to, and it makes me feel like I'm less alone. And then maybe somebody else has never heard about it will be like, oh, this is interesting, you know, I'm learning something new here.
Like for me, I've learned so much from just listening to other dancers, and also dancers that I knew maybe already, and I asked them like, oh, would you be willing to do an interview with me, because I saw them as like such strong individuals, and I was like, oh, I want you to share how you got to be that way. And then when they would really open up and I would hear things that they'd never told me before, because it's not something, because we don't talk about mental health, because we put up facades, and you put your best foot forward, like we're taught since childhood, put your best foot forward, and so you put on like your everything's good face, and you build this beautiful facade around your life. And so it's been really eye-opening to so many people that I've known for several years that ended up going on the blog and then learning so many intimate details about things they actually kind of struggle with and how they get through it and what they learned from it. It's really comforting, and it's really nice to normalize it within everyone, that everyone has their thing, and that's okay.
And honestly, like, you know, when we talk about needing to be positive, I think, you know, the fact that like we talk about these things and we're still, you know, like you and I and like other people who we've talked to over the course of, you know, our respective social media accounts and businesses, the fact that people are talking about this and they're like still keep going in itself is an inherently positive thing. Like we don't have to do anything else to like make it all sunshine and daisies, because the fact that we all deal with stuff, but we're all still keeping on going, and we're talking about these problems because we want to make them better for we want to make things better for ourselves and everybody, is in itself, I think, the most constructive and positive way we can talk about it, because it's real and it's relatable and it's, you know, true, and it's so we don't have to, like I said, put some more icing on it, you know.
And I like that, like something that I feel like I'm so thankful for is through all this, through this journey of like Biscuit Ballerina growing and then trying to figure out like what can I do with this attention that's coming to it, how can I make it something positive, is it's really held me accountable, that it's a little bit like practice what you preach. So that the fact that I'm constantly talking about like tuning into yourself and being aware, and also kind of with the number of interviews I do with different people and learning about different things that different people have gone through, it's forced me to tune into myself more than I maybe would have. It's forced me to be more forgiving of myself, because it's like, if I'm saying it, let me like put it into practice. And then also teaching has definitely taught me a lot of compassion for other people, because there were so many things I never knew about. I never knew that people were struggling with. And because I didn't know, I just dismissed things as like, oh, that person's not interested. Oh, that person's lazy, whatever, because I didn't know like behind the wall what was really happening. And so it's so opening up these conversations with more and more dancers has definitely made me more sensitive to like, okay, let me think about like how I say things that maybe for me it wouldn't impact me in a negative way, but if I said it to someone else who's dealing with this or that now I know my friend, that person deals with that, or this person struggles with this, realizing, oh, it really can impact them in a negative way. So it's been such a learning experience also, which is I'm very thankful for.
And I think that's something to be said about in the age of social media, when, you know, people can just put out things very quickly. It's I guess, and that's the good thing, is that recognizing that you have a following and like thinking about how can I use my brand and my story responsibly to benefit the community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think in a sense, it's almost like you're taking on more work for yourself, because like for you, it would be so much easier to just put out like funny videos. And that's it, you know?
Yeah.
But like to do the extra work of like creating these webinars or like talking about mental health, like I said, you know, when I talk about it, I feel more vulnerable, but that's why like I feel like that's why I feel like I have to do it, because I'm like, if nobody else is talking, I feel vulnerable because nobody else is talking about it. And so therefore I have to. But at the same time, you know, it's more work for you and you're putting yourself more out there in a position to, I guess, almost feel like be judged. Because nobody else really talks about it. Everybody's, you know, keeping their problems to themselves, which I mean, it's fine if people are not comfortable talking about it, they shouldn't be made to. But, you know, I think people just need to recognize that, you know, what you're doing is, you know, it's not something you have to do. And it's incredible. And I think it's something that, you know, you definitely should keep going at it, except when you need a break and then take a break.
No, but it's true. It's like, I think that even if it's not just for me to express how I'm feeling and being honest, because it's difficult. You don't want to, it's difficult to maintain like although I said like, it would be easier just to put up funny videos all the time. I feel like it also wouldn't be as satisfying, because on days where you're really not feeling good and you don't feel like doing that, it feels so much better to put something authentic out there and just keeping like a consistent high of funny content all the time. That's not authentic. That's not realistic. So it just feels better to be kind of true to yourself and true to like your own personality. And okay, today I feel like doing this, or today I really feel like being serious and having a serious conversation with someone, and like this is a cause I really care about, so I'm gonna just offer like. So last night I did a webinar with ex-colleague of mine from Dresden, that he runs programs for individuals with Down syndrome, like dance for individuals with Down syndrome. And this is probably maybe a theme that like a lot of people who come to my page, they just want to see funny videos of people doing ballet, like having bloopers or like me undoing technique. But I think what he's doing is really amazing. So I was like, okay, maybe most people ignore it. Maybe some people unfollow me because they're like, I don't want this like outreach stuff or whatever. But I'll be like, but for me, I find it really valuable and I wanted to share it with the world. And it's nice that the satisfaction of being able to put importance on things that I really think do have value is so much for me, is so much more rewarding than just like increasing followers and just making something that's kind of shallow.
Yeah, I think for both of us, like what we're doing, they are, you know, passion projects for us. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
And so, you know, I think you would agree with me that when we do things because they are things that we feel passionate about, it's like they have to be purposeful and meaningful. If not, what's the point of doing them? I should if I just want to make money, I just go work at Starbucks. You know, less work, easier, but not as fulfilling. You know, for you, same thing. You don't have to do all this extra work with Biscuit Ballerina. You can just, you know, just be like a professional dancer and not have to worry about doing this other stuff and this extra things. But it's because you want to do it and you feel like it's important to have a conversation going at the same time. You know, make you smile and laugh.
And it's also a different like connection to the type of people that you do meet or you connect through your work. Like I'm sure the people who come to your brand and the people who order from your brand, it's people that they really resonate with your message and like the energy that you put into your work and what you put importance on. So it also feels like a more meaningful connection with your customers. That for me, although I don't have like customers in the sense of I have like really minimal merchandise that just says like Biscuit Ballerina or something like that. But it comes more in the fact of like when I go and guest teach, like now the schools that invite me to teach, it's it's really nice because it's not just, oh, okay, you're a professional dancer and we want you to teach a ballet class. The schools that bring me in, they really say like, we like your message and we want you, usually like we follow class with like a Q&A, and I talk to students about pressure in dance and how to cope with pressure in dance, and like what are kind of the most things that can cause anxiety or depression, or what are you dealing emotionally or mentally with in dance, and how can we approach it that you can really enjoy it to its fullest. So it's that I really enjoy. So then like the other things that come out of it is that the type of people I connect with, the ones who then invite me because of this platform, they're the people I really enjoy most working with. And I love teaching in those kinds of schools that really put an importance on the bigger picture of everything, the bigger picture of life, and not just the success of like getting a job and that's it.
Yeah. And I think just from a social media standpoint, I think, when we're saying we're just worrying, I know when you focus more on, like say creating like meaningful and fulfilling work, or putting up meaningful and fulfilling content on, social media, as opposed to just worrying about likes, that's where, in the long term, you see, I guess, more returns, because I'm sure that in that sense, some of the opportunities you have with teaching also come from the fact that you were a Biscuit ballerina. And it's because you've built a community and you've built like a space where people feel they appreciate what you do, and also they can relate to you and they want to hear more from you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also the like the schools that I end up getting connections with, there's always a thing of like, how much of a true representation of myself am I on social media? Because obviously it's a curated platform, and it's like a resume. You put your best content out there. But because you're my bicycle, but because essentially like the content that's on, I have like Biscuit Ballerina, and then I have Shelby's Grooves, which is like a separate Instagram account I made for actually like the work I'm doing with Royal Ballet Flanders, and mostly it's video clips from the company and stuff like that. But it's nice knowing that the people who find me via Biscuit and they invite me to teach, I honestly feel like less nervous about, oh, what if I don't fulfill their expectations, than I would if someone found me via my other account. Via my other account, okay, it's true, it is my work, but it's all my best work. So what if someone wants to collaborate with me, and then they meet me and they're like, oh, like I had this whole idea of what you were as a dancer and you don't live up to it. I think that's kind of always a fear. I mean, I think that's anytime you get an opportunity, there's always a little bit tied, like, oh, I hope I'm what they expect. But with Biscuit Ballerina, with Biscuit Ballerina, because I try to be so honest all the time, and I'm really just sharing my thoughts as I think them. I've never had an experience where I like went and met people that it was supposed to be like a Biscuit Ballerina collaboration where we didn't vibe right away. Like the messages and understanding of how we see things and how open we want to be about things, they match right away, because luckily there's like a way to be so authentic with that brand that those connections last, and like people that I met and I taught, then I like go back still. So the genuine side of it all is really satisfying.
Authenticity of it.
Yeah. So that's like the advantage to being vulnerable. Like the advantage to putting yourself out there is like when you make connections, you can feel comfortable that like, wow, they're true connections.
Very quickly, because I know that you have to go for class and I don't want to keep you, but I do want to just say something, which is that like, you talk about Biscuit Ballerina deconstructing technique. Like when I watch the videos, I think people have to give you credit for being a really good dancer, because it's scary and it's dangerous to do the things you're doing if you don't have good technique inherently. Like when you do them, do you like? Is it scary sometimes to do them? Because I watch them and I'm scared.
I always did it, and it was never scary for me. I think just because like my ankles were really, really inflexible when I was a kid, and I put up one picture lately because my mom sent me one, and then that's when I started this like baby Biscuit Ballerina that I asked people to send in pictures from when they were younger. But it's a picture from like after a year or two on point, and me in releve, and where my foot is, it's like this kind of pulled back biscuit that's how I danced until I was like 15. Like I had like a good solid 3-4 years on point. And even then it was like a really slow process to get more and more over my foot. So the way people keep me, like it was kind of a shock for me when people started telling me like, don't hurt yourself, because when I dance like Biscuit Ballerina, it doesn't feel scary at all, because it's something I'm so familiar with. When I was a kid, like I just could not get over my shoes. So that's just for me like another option, you know. There's like, okay, you can wear sandals, or you can wear high heels, or you can wear pumps, like you like that there's a different kinds of shoes you can wear. That's for me with point shoes. Like I can be over my shoe, I can be back on my shoe, I can be flat on my shoe. Like I for me it's never felt scary, and I've never hurt my ankle. Sometimes with some of the other things that I do that it's like really out of control, I have to be like, okay, Shelby, make sure you understand like where you're going with your weight and calculate it a little bit. So I think about those things. But when it comes to like dancing back on my shoes, I don't think about it twice, and it doesn't feel scary, and I never hurt myself.
That, my friend, is called true skill and versatility as an artist. I bet you there are principal dancers who can't do that instead of breaking their feet.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a round of applause for that.
Definitely there are people who like, if they were, especially the ones who were born with like nice feet and then they had to learn to control, like I always just think of like the perfect example is Giselle variation from First Act, the hops on point on the diagonal. And that's like, when I was a kid, that was nothing for me. I was like, give me this variation. I'll hop for like 2 hours. I'll just keep hopping, because it's just like my ankle was stiff and it was locked into place. And then that was that's probably one of the first examples where I realized like there's advantages to everything. And then like my friends that I had been so envious of, that they had like these beautiful, beautiful feet, when I saw how much they struggled because they had that hypermobility and that range of motion in their ankle, they really struggled to do hops on point, because it's so much more to have to stabilize. That I was like, okay, there's advantages to everything, you know? Nothing is inherently bad. It's like there's good and bad in everything. So that was a nice life lesson.
You just gotta figure out how to accept what you have and work what you got.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's a really nice note to end the podcast on. So, Shelby, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing like what other content you do, what other, fun things and meaningful things that Biscuit Ballerina is up to. And I wish you continued success with your career and your kitchen renovations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure chatting this morning. And yeah, I hope we have like more future chats. You have to come on my webinar. We'll do some fun talking then too.
Yeah, let's do that. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's so nice to finally connect with you. And this was like such a nice conversation to have.
Yeah, take care. We'll talk soon.